Okay, I think let's start because we need to be cognizant of time. I know everybody is busy and we try to keep within the time limit. We did have some people that really wanted to join but couldn't join. And they've asked that we pass on the recording to them anyway. And then anybody else that joins late, we will definitely be sharing the recording afterwards for their perusals if they missed anything. So I'd like to kick off the session today and say thank you very much for everybody who is able to join. We are today very honored to have people again situated in very different parts of the world that have made some time to to tell our customers about this, what we think is a fantastic solution, something that people forget about. That's actually, it becomes a problem when it becomes a problem. So we need to make sure that our customers that are having Office 365, that they are aware of the potential issue before it becomes a real issue. So just for the benefit of starting off the call, Vanessa Maresh from Salt Essential IT. I'm the Commercial Expansion Manager. And we have great pleasure today to introduce you to our partners, Innovision, and bringing you the solution, KeepIt. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Sahil, to just, introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you. Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everybody. First of all, thank you to be here in this session with us today. And also like to extend my thanks to the SALT IT team in Haku who has given us the opportunity to be here with you and to talk about a topic that very often is overlooked by most of us, and that is the backup of our cloud data. My name is Sahil Koerati. I'm part of the Innovision team and based out of Mauritius. Innovision is the official distributor for KeepIt for the Indian Ocean Islands, Sub-Sahara Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. I look forward to have the opportunity to have, I would say, a more deeper conversation with you at a later stage together with the SALT IT team and have the possibility to discuss on how you can leverage KeepIt in order to protect your data as part of your overall data protection strategy. Without further ado, I'm going to pass on to Daniel from the KeepIt team, who's going to dig deeper into the subject. Thank you very much. Daniel, over to you.
Okay, guys, nice to meet you all. So I think the quickest way for me to explain KeepIt is by diving into a demonstration of KeepIt. Now, I guess some of you, if you do have any questions so far, I'm happy to take them. But KeepIt is a backup cloud tool. And what we are doing is basically making a capture of your Office 365 workloads. If we go further, Dynamics, Azure AD in the Microsoft services, and then also Google Workspace and Salesforce included. Now, I'll quickly share my screen and we can go into a light demonstration. So this is a bit of an open forum for you all as well to ask any questions if you have any. But KeepIt, the way that we're able to capture the data is within multiple data centers across the globe. Now, we have 5 geographical locations in which we have data centers. Now, for each geographical location, there's 2 data centers in each. This is for data integrity and resilience in that way, and also for, I guess, any layover and fail effect as well. So to begin with, in each data center location, for example, here on my screen, I'm logging into the Denmark Copenhagen. We also have Frankfurt in Germany, Sydney in Australia, and then Washington in the US. So with that, there's 2 data centers in each. And then at each data center, we make 2 copies. So you're getting 4 copies of your data for each location. So without further ado, I'm signing in directly into Denmark, which is where my data will remain. None of our data centers communicate with one another, so you'll know where your data exactly resides. Now signing in, we'll be taken to what is the dashboard screen here. This is where you're going to get a quick overview of the status of all of your connected accounts. It gives you a high-level overview of what you're capturing already, when the next backup is meant to start, and as well any recent restore jobs that have happened. You're also able to get an overview of basically how your backups have been performing. If you've seen any failed ones, you can get a quick high-level overview here. And if you have any other users in the platform, what the recent sort of restores have been and how much activity there is. And this way you can sort of track how much use you're using KeepIt for. This you won't do too much interaction with. It is more just to give you a digestible amount of what's happening, a reporting overview. And this you can really dive in deeper in that way. But you will spend majority of your time here on the connectors screen. You can disregard the physical connectors. We are a cloud-based solution. This physical connectors is for an older feature which we no longer support, but I want to really focus on that we are only capturing cloud workloads. So all of your connectors, they have prerequisites in place for connecting to them. For the Office series, we are requiring a service user, which has global administrator permissions, and then with that, have an appropriate license as well. Those licenses can be an E1, E3, or E5 if you're in the enterprise side. And then on the business side, you can have business essentials, premium, and basic as well. Now, we can simply add as many connectors as we like. And as you can see, I have connectors specific for different departments. So you can split this out to be for different offices, or you can split this up to be for different sort of regulatory reasons that you have. But we simply add connector by clicking add connector, and then add Microsoft 365 connector, and then simply click next. Now this splash screen that we just saw there is just to show you that we need a global admin and a service user in place. Everything I just described. And then you'll be taken to Microsoft where you typically sign in with your service user account and then grant the permissions that KeepIt requires. So here is where we can really start defining what it is we want to capture within this backup. So from here, we could be as granular as we like. We could say we only want to capture Exchange and OneDrive. And if we want to, we can create another connector then capturing SharePoint and Teams. Or we can be even more defining and similar to those other connectors I showed earlier. You can make this specific to Active Directory groups, for example. So here we can actually make this based on a particular security group if you want to, just the legal department. And this way, only the users within that legal department will be included, these 3 users. Now, from that, if you want to exclude any users, you can do that as well. And then from that, you can also choose if this is going to be the same group used for OneDrive. We can also define which content it is we want to back up here. So if there's any regulatory reasons that you don't want to back up particular content, sometimes we see contacts is not what people want. From here, you can just simply exclude contacts, for example. We can go ahead, double check that this is the same group for OneDrive. And as you can see, it's the same group of users. For SharePoint, it's a lot more straightforward. We're actually backing up based on naming conventions. So if you want to have these defined connectors to build sort of dynamic capturing of lists, we can actually then say, right, well, we actually only need one for legal. I don't think I have any, so we'll try sales again. And then with this naming convention in place, we can actually have all the sites that are in the filter here be captured. And now anytime a new site is added meeting this naming convention, it would automatically be included in the backup. And then finally, Teams. We can also go through here and define what it is that we need to capture. And for example, we can build the same sort of filters similar to SharePoint. We also have a little bit more control on the data coverage here as well. Now, we've built one for legal and sales, very odd sort of connector, but in this example, you may want to build it for whatever department or offices you require. From here, we can actually make this data have a specific retention period. Now you might say, well, this has sensitive data contained within it, so we only want to make a backup for maybe 1 year, whereas maybe you have different other regulatory reasons that you have to back up longer, and you would then agree to a different length. Otherwise, you can always restrict it. As well as that, we also have the access to this connector. Now here, this is where we can choose which users should have access. So if you're starting to bring in a service desk or a help desk down the track, in this scenario, we can actually define which users should have access to this. And from here, you could determine, well, this is not very sensitive information, so Jerry and Ben can have access. And I'll go into the user roles a little bit further down the track, but so far they are able to have access to the data in this connector. From here, we simply click save, and that backup will start shortly. So just want to say, does anyone have any questions so far? I can't see the hand raised or anything while I'm presenting.
I'll keep an eye out on that. So
Brilliant.
we're good for now.
Cool. So I'll go into one of the completed connectors here. We have basically all of what we've captured or defined in the capture here. We can go straight in. We can see all of our users that we're backing up. We can go straight into a user's account, and we can go straight into their OneDrive, for example, and see all the content within their account. Now from here, we can actually quickly preview the file to confirm this is the document we need to restore. We can go through and look at all the versions of this particular document. So if it's actually the version before that we need to restore back, we can actually grab this version. We can then perform a restore. Now I should mention that in KeepIt, all restores are done in place. So if the original file does exist, it will be overwritten. So this is something to be wary of. Otherwise, if you don't want it to overwrite that existing file, you can simply download this exact version, or you can share a link to this exact version. And this shareable link, you can then send over to the end user. You can say it's valid for 2 hours, and then you add a password to it for a layer of security. Then what we sort of recommend is that you do share the password over a different medium. So if you're going to share this link over Teams or Exchange, you would then send a text message with the password, for example, just so that it can't be intercepted. Now, as well as that, all of the same functionality exists here. We can restore, we can go through versions, download, and share. This assigned to right to be forgotten label is the RTBF. This is more for GDPR purposes. Maybe you have some privacy regulations that you have to comply to as well. But in this way, if we have a data subject which has revoked their consent for being backed up, we are able to now apply a label to that particular file. It will look something like this current virus list here. We can't interfere with this file. It will remain in the backup for the duration of the retention period. Once it reaches that retention period, it will be purged from the backup. As well as that, taking a step back, we can go straight into Outlook, for example. We can go in, we can see the user's entire inbox. We have still all the same functionality as I showed you with OneDrive. There is a few other features I need to show too. We have this button up here, which is the deleted items view. Now, I haven't specifically deleted any emails from Alan's Outlook here, but otherwise we're able to quickly identify any deleted items between snapshots. You can identify them. They'll have a little deleted written here and a little trash can here. So you can identify those and then simply restore those back. Another piece as well, the snapshot viewer here. This allows us to bounce back to any snapshot point in time. So we can go right back to last week and then pull up a snapshot. Now, while we're talking about snapshots, you will be getting, after the first backup, which is an entire snapshot, you'll be getting 2 incremental snapshots done per day. So we're only going to be capturing the changes, the modifications, deletions, additions in your accounts. And then that way we're updating all of those records on our side with the new files. We also have the availability here to restore multiple files if we need to, download multiple, and if you need to use the right to be forgotten, you can also assign multiple at one time as well. Now, there might be a few other questions that you may ask. Can we grab a PST from here? You can quickly grab a PST of the user's entire Outlook if you need to, right from here as well. Now, if you also have deleted users within your tenant, so when a user leaves the company and you remove the license and they're scheduled to be deleted, you can use the deleted items view. And just here, for example, Bianca, who has a deleted account, you can actually go in and access all her account as it was similar to with Alan before. Now, moving onwards to SharePoint, does anyone have any questions before I move on?
Not that I saw.
Too easy. So SharePoint, we have an extensive coverage of SharePoint. Now, we're backing up both your SharePoint sites and your Teams channels, both public and private. And they do have a heavy reliance on one another. And I'll show you when I go into the Teams coverage that we do actually have to use the SharePoint site on occasions. Now, particularly for SharePoint, If the group has been deleted from the permissions, we can restore the group and the permissions will come back to the site. Any customization on that site is also captured, and most importantly, the content. So with the content, that's stored under the document library here, and then all your content will reside here. You can then restore that, similar to how I showed you with OneDrive and Exchange. We have all the same capabilities as we did once before. Now, one thing I do want to discuss is that I did show that when we do restores and KeepIt, they are almost always in-place restores. The thing is with SharePoint, we actually have abilities to do a little bit more than that. So in the event that this all company, it's an intranet site, it's a heavy reliant piece for your organization to carry on, it goes down. So what you can do is actually go back to the snapshot. It went down today, so we'll go back to the previous snapshot where we have 2 snapshots to pick from, and we go back to that previous version. So I'm able to see that version of the intranet at that date. What I can do then is do a restore. Now, this way, when we're doing the restore of a SharePoint site, we can either override it, but we don't want to have any potential data loss. So in this way, we'll just bring it back with a brand new URL. Now, when we do this restore, we define a new URL for it. This is the new URL of the site. It will be bringing back the site with all of the content as it was at this snapshot date and the permissions and sort of customizations on that site as it was at that date. And then we can perform that restore. Now, moving on to Teams, as I discussed, there is a heavy reliance on how we back up Teams with SharePoint. So when we go into a Teams channel, for example, we will actually see this linkage to SharePoint. Now, depending on whether or not this is a public or private channel, files will be stored in different locations. So as this is a public channel, files are simply stored under files. We can go to files and we can access them here. But if it's a private channel, we'll actually be redirected to the SharePoint site. We'll go into SharePoint, into the document library, and then we'll follow that procedure I showed you a minute ago to get your content. This is just one of the kinks of working with SharePoint and Teams, but you always rest assured that your private channels will also be captured in their entirety. Other pieces that are captured is the channels and the posts within those channels. We're capturing that. And if you need to, you can also preview a post before you restore it in. One of the unique things about Teams is that when we do these restores of posts, now, if a post had been completely deleted, completely regardless if the replies have been deleted or not, when we do this restore, it's actually brought to the bottom of the thread. You can see that the service user would be listed, and then it originally posted by the original user, and it will bring back all of the content along with it. A few things though, the chat function, we're not backing up chat. It has been a limitation from Microsoft. They have recently allowed access to that part of the API, but we have not got a backup coverage of it yet. It is something that is coming. There is a few things that we will have to notify our customers of, and it will be something that you would have to opt in for. This is simply because there is probably some sort of personal or sensitive conversations that happen in chat, and you may have to notify your employees. But otherwise, that's Teams. Now, before I move on to sort of the security side and governance on GDPR, on disaster recovery and business continuity, does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Daniel, it's going to be a little bit quiet today. I've got lots of customers who's or people who've been dropping on and off because of internet problems, but I'm sure we'll have some questions afterwards because everyone's asking me to share the recording. So just
fair enough.
Yeah,
Enough. I'll carry on then. I won't
Thanks.
ask for any more questions then.
No, I'll let you know. I'm keeping tabs on the hands. Okay.
Brilliant. Just interrupt me then.
Cool.
Now, in the event of, you do have a disaster and touch wood, it never happens, and you have to initiate your disaster recovery. You could simply come straight into the connector as I have here and click select all and then restore everything. Now, I want to be firm here. I do not recommend this. This is not a controlled way to do a restore. You're not bringing back the most business critical data first, but it is an option and it's not very, I would say, the correct way to do it. Now, you can simply come to the connector then, click the Restore Wizard button here, and then go to the Restore function. Now, with this, we can then go back to the snapshot where the disaster happened. So the disaster happened today. We'll go back to the day before. From there, we actually then can start defining what our business recovery plan is. So we go to Exchange first. We then say, right, we do need all the users back, but we only need their mail and calendar first. Contracts, task, archive, this is important, but mail and calendar, this is business critical. We then determine how we want to restore it. Now, here's another one of those pieces in KeepIt where you can restore to a new place, and this will create a new folder in their Exchange. Otherwise, we'll restore it in place, and we can then skip any duplicate items. You know, they may have some residual content before the disaster happened, or we can do a complete rename and it will rename all the files that are restored with a KeepIt timestamp. And then from there, we can perform that restore. We would then go to step 2. Step 2 might be Teams. You can then define which Teams channels it is that you need. It's maybe just these particular Teams channels. It's the site, the owners, and the files, the conversations as well, maybe. From here, then you can probably want to do a fresh overwrite and then perform that restore. So what I really am trying to elaborate on here is that you can build out almost a step-by-step plan for your disaster recovery business continuity solution. Now, there's things where you have to determine, you know, what your RTO and RPO is and pieces like that, but you can go ahead and sort of work this through to meet your requirements that way. The second piece, the import function. This is a drastically different tool. The import function here is more like a migration-like feature. So I wouldn't say it's a full-fledged migration tool. It is migration-like. It has some capabilities. What we can do is we can migrate user data from one tenant to another tenant. So you can add multiple Microsoft tenants if you need to, or you can also migrate one user from the same tenant into another user's account. So it has a lot of use cases. You might use this for, you know, offboarding procedures, things like that. So we just simply then pick this connector we need to pull data from, the snapshot that we want to go back to. And then, as I said, it's only user data. So we'll take OneDrive for this example. Now, in this example, Adele, maybe she was an employee at the company. She has since left the company. And then Deborah is the manager. So what we can do then is migrate all of Adele's OneDrive straight into Deborah's account. And then we can do that in restore how we need to. There's a number of use cases here. If Adele was accidentally deleted in the tenant, you would just select Adele's old account and then migrate it onto Adele's new account. If you maybe had a consulting service and then you've decided to move on to a new consulting team and that project then has to be migrated across, you can also just migrate all of those users straight across into the new project team. There's a number of different ways to use this. How do you want to do these restores? Also gives you a number of methods how to bring them back. Maybe you want to be fresh and just completely overwrite Deborah's OneDrive, or you just want to skip any residual content that's there and then import. So very powerful and two very different uses within the restore wizard. Moving on to now the job monitor. This is more the overview of all of your jobs that are happening. You can see all the backups, you can see all the restores that you're doing. You're able to get a quick high-level overview. This module here is what feeds information to the dashboard. And so this is more giving you the insight here. We can then go through, we can look at a particular connector. We can then look at the growth of that connector. We can then also look at any items that have been skipped. Now, particularly to this one, which is the CRM one, there's a number of reasons why files are skipped. More on the Office 365 side, files that are skipped can come from throttling. It can come from criteria in the connector that's no longer being met, a number of different reasons. And we have a whole support article on throttling and the different types. You can pull these logs off. We have them via APIs. So if you want to feed this to an external dashboard, you can do that as well. And you can also go through and download reports if you need to too. The public links. Now, all of those links that you're creating and sharing externally, you can manage them here. We can actually go through and see them. We can extend the access if we need to. Maybe it needs to be an extra couple of hours. I can see there's no password on it, so I can attach a password to it as well. And then now it is protected. And we can also see any of the shared links now that aren't protected. Moving on to the users. Now we have a number of user roles within KeepIt, and as I showed you on the connectors, once you create the user, you then have to add them to that connector. So if we go to here, we can click the plus button. It's a similar, form to fill out, but we have a number of roles that you can grant. We have a limited support, which is quite a restrictive permission. This is where we normally see the lower help desk or service desk team being brought in at, up to, your sort of administrator levels. And a compliance admin is more specific for your data protection officer or security officer in that way. And finally, if you are audited, you can bring in an auditor and they will have access for potentially 2 weeks with an expiring account. With that, they will only be able to view the audit log, which when we come in here is capturing all user events within the platform. So here you can see all my motions throughout this demonstration so far. These logs are stored in a way that's immutable. I'm clicking everywhere here. I cannot interfere with these logs. They are stored for the entire duration of your contract. So from the moment that your account is created to the point in time that maybe you go to a different vendor, these logs are stored for that point. There's APIs here, so if you want to feed this off to a centralized logging system like Sentinel or Splunk or something like that, you can also do that as well. And we'll work with you on doing that. The right to be forgotten. Now, this is only accessible by the master admin and the compliance admin. And as I said, this is probably be more relevant for the security officer or privacy officers in your organization. But here we can manage all of the files that have a right to be forgotten label attached. We can then go through, we can download a report. So if you do have a data protection authority that has asked for a report on how many data subjects you've got that are marked, you can do that here. Or if you've accidentally applied a label, you can actually come here and just say accidental. And then remove the label. And then that comment will be stored in the audit log. Single sign-on. Now you can set your single sign-on up to work with your identity provider, whether that is Azure AD, or if you have a third-party one such as Okta or SailPoint, we can also integrate with those. We have some requirements, which is that we need an IDP URL and a certificate from the IDP provider. And then on the other hand, we would provide them with some specific URLs, and we have a guide in our support site on how to do just that. The messages module, this here is just showing you all of the system mails that you will get. It's not a lot of mails, it's simply because I'm adding a lot of connectors. It looks like a lot of mails, but you'll also get notification of when you've had unsuccessful backups for these two, for example. Or if you have done restores, you're able to get a quick view on what exactly was restored and a file path to it, just not the file itself. So it's a good way to do some high-level administration, and this can point to like an alerting mailbox, for example. The final piece, support. This will bounce you to our support site. There's a number of articles here, so it's like a large wiki. You can click under any of these headings here. You can also see any release notes we have. Up the top, you can see any system maintenance. And then finally, if you need to get in touch with the support, you can submit a ticket. But to go into a better explanation of the user roles, as I was talking about earlier, you can also come here and we can actually get a bit better of a high-level overview of who has access to what. But otherwise, that actually brings me to the end of the demonstration. So I'll open up the forum once more if there's any questions or anything like that.
Any questions? You have a silent group today, Daniel, but I think it's on and off with internet issues. So from my side, thank you very much. That was certainly insightful, but I don't have any questions. It looks super straightforward to me. Did you mention the locations of where the data centers are that you're doing the backups to?
Yep. So just to go over those again, the 5 data center locations are Australia, Sydney, Washington, US, London, UK, Frankfurt in Germany, and Copenhagen in Denmark.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. We'll definitely be sharing a recording with everyone who could attend and everyone who couldn't attend after the fact. And we'll also be sharing a feedback form so that if anyone that has attended or hasn't attended wants to have a one-on-one session, I think that'll be Sahil and team that we will be engaging with. But yeah, that was it. Thank you very, very much.